Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the WeedHead. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, New York cannabis is going nowhere. Big MSOs pay their white CEOs millions for failing businesses, and we're having the great Delta-8 debate.
Okay, well, of course, I'm so excited to be back on another episode of She Blaze. There's so much going on in the world of cannabis right now. The tea is hot. Let's kick things off with our high of the week. And my high of the week is we are celebrating 5 years in this crazy cannabis industry. I'm so excited. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to me, to Imani, to the whole family. And we'll be celebrating this year at National Cannabis Festival is back. I'm so hyped. Method Man, Red Man are the headliners, which is perfect. So we're hoping that people come through, join us. We'll have a VIP cabana. It is also my baby sis' birthday. I don't know if y'all know who she is, but we will be celebrating her birthday as well. The fabulous Ice Cannabis Socialite will certainly be socializing on that day. So I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I've had a few nervous breakdowns since, but I'm still definitely. No, I'm not. I mean, after Lollapalooza, I was like, wait, what we doing? What we doing again? But this will be a great way to celebrate 5 years because it has been a very, very long time. And if you know us, you know we have showed up and showed out at NCF every time we've gone. And so I'm really excited to do that. My high of the week, I just wanted to keep it simple and let you guys know I am definitely dabbing on something great. It is lemon cake batter, and I mean the limonene in it is so potent. You open it and you think you're smelling pine sol. It has 63% THC, 13% CBD, and I really enjoy it. I put it on my twax joints. Sometimes I put it on my bong bowls. So to be able to have some good concentrates during this year breakdown, this month of breakdowns, really is working.
You are hilarious. It is not a year of breakdowns. I'll tolerate a month. It has been a crazy month. And thank God for cannabis and community, because without either of those, I don't know if we would have survived.
Yes, it's a crazy month. I was just saying that because, you know, it's my birthday and I actually was like, I don't really want to do anything. And so it's like other people trying to plan stuff around me. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing?
Well, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff, apparently. And I'm excited. So I hope that folks come out, bring your bud, bring your concentrates. National Cannabis Festival in DC on August 28th. Join us in VIP. And definitely we will be having a good time, period.
Yes, and smoking strong. And with that being said, let's go strong into these hot topics because the tea is hot, you guys. So the first hot topic is, I know everyone's waiting on it. Will New York be stalled, right? Like, New York is going through a lot at the moment, but we know that at the end of March, they did pass legalization, one of the most diverse, equity-facing and comprehensive bill in the country. I mean, at the end of the day, people are smoking cannabis like they smoke cigarettes, which we don't want people to smoke cigarettes, but we do want the freedom to be able to smoke it where cigarettes are allowed. So it's still one of the best bills in this country and hopefully continues to get better. But it is a little bit of a sad moment as we start to realize that they may not be able to get the market up as fast as they would like. So we know that we were expecting to hear some things in September about different appointments and nominations that are happening in New York, and we have not heard a zip zilch peep. And then more tea came out about New York.
Yes, so it is. I mean, where do we start? New York is one of those places where we are all so excited. So you're like a kid trying to wait for the amusement park ride to open up, and you can jump right in and all of that. And you know, it's one of those things where they come out and they say we're closed again for the day. one of the things you pointed out was the decriminalization aspects of the New York bill. So just not to sleep on it, but you can now consume cannabis in New York in a relative decriminalized fashion. That means up to 3 ounces on yourself. You can actually give and take 3 ounces without any money exchange. And there's still no home grow technically. By the law, if you're a medical patient in New York, you can home grow by September 30th, which is exactly 6 months from when the bill was signed, and that's in the statute. But everything else in the statute is really dependent on those appointments. And without those appointments, the things that we have all been very excited about will not come to fruition. There's no start to the implementation. Meanwhile, New Jersey's moving right along, and they've started, with a lot of listening sessions, conversations with the public, requests for information. None of that has happened yet. So we don't even know who's going to be running the office. But what we do know is that there is a medical program that currently exists. And we as advocates, if you just want to stay focused and out of the fray of like, will he or won't he in reference to Governor Cuomo, there is definitely law in place with the medical program. The governor's office has every opportunity without really asking anyone or getting any approvals or confirmations from Senate to expand the medical program to include flower. It still doesn't. And that to me, as a representative of 35-40% of the sales in every other legal market, it's like, okay, you need flower. Right. You also need more licenses. There's only 10 ROs, really 9 in the New York market. And that to me, is not what makes a great market, especially when you have that many consumers with that much different thought on as to how you want to use cannabis. Because right. Again, it's always medicinal. Right. It literally is naturally a pharmacy. And all what we've been doing in the regulatory space is really just, I would say continue to bastardize it, water it down, jack it up, like Minnesota market is like the worst representation of what cannabis can do in a market. So, but this is all because of politics.
States competing with Minnesota on that one.
Okay, you're right. You're right. I've been ragging on Minnesota for a long time because their businesses actually had to declare bankruptcy too. So it's like, it's bad for the consumer and it's bad for the business. And there are some markets that the businesses are still paying their CEOs a whole bunch of money. And I know we're going to get into that. And the consumers are still getting put in prison. So those are really bad markets in my opinion.
Yes. Okay. And I know everyone's like, why do you think it's stalled? Why do you think it's stalled? Well, right now, the governor, he's a career governor. He has to nominate the executive director for the office, and he has to name 3 of the appointees of the control board. So we know that originally when we really started lobbying in 2016 for legalization in New York, we knew that he was still calling it the gateway drug. Over time, he's eased up about it, but that doesn't mean he really eased up about it. And there's a part that is like, right now, he is under investigation. So does he even want to move the chess pieces on the board to help cannabis like that? Not if he doesn't see him being a slam dunk. So right now he's under investigation for inappropriate behavior in the workforce. And they're talking about impeachment. But he's also under investigation for misusing power and funds during the pandemic, y'all. So there's a lot that's happening. So even though he may be reluctant, he might want to appoint these people, but under investigation, thinking about impeachment, it's a lot going on.
It's too much going on. And let's be real, it's already been a little bit of drama behind the scenes. So we actually expected appointments before session let out. Session let out over a month ago. And so we still are waiting. So what happened during session? What happened during session is that the people that the governor's office initially thought would be leading, I think, he had someone in mind. That did not play out well because the Senate and the Assembly pushed back and said, no, we legalize with this intent. The person that's currently running the program is not align with this intent and does not have the experience implementing under this intent. And we want someone who understands that. And so the search began. Still not seeing all of the pieces laid out. Like Virginia literally laid out a whole book about how they were going to select who could be nominated and who you needed to email it to get nominated. And then they put out their selections. We can't get mad at that process because we saw it. However, right now in New York, all we know is like hearsay. It's a lot of, if you have your ear to the ground, if you're an advocate, then maybe you're hearing this. But guess what? It's politics. So you hearing both things. I've been hearing that this whole time. This has been a political struggle on the MTA appointments situation. And because he has to make that and basically negotiating and using the cannabis appointments in that negotiation. That's just a little bit of the tea I've heard. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. You're still messing with two really important parts of New York that you actually want to get jump started. MTA's been down year over year. And after COVID, not as many of us, unless you absolutely have to, actually riding the trains and the buses anymore. We've been inside for most of the last 18 months. Right. So that their revenue is down. This is state revenue at the end of the day. And that's what I kind of come back to as a government official is how is this impacting the monies that we're bringing in to give back to the constituents and services? And so there's the MTA, which we already know. Listen, I'm a Brooklyn girl. I know what these trains have looked like and where they come. It's gone a long way. I'll give you that. The person, you can actually understand the woman that is talking to you to tell you your stop. All right. You can, there's some electronics underground. Okay. But it still is rat infested and smells like piss 90% of the time. Okay. Right. You go to major countries and their biggest cities around the world, and that is not what you find at all. So that's one part. And then on the cannabis side, like we've already talked, there's no flower, limited licenses, and basically they're still, hovering around 150,000 patients, which is way smaller than Florida, way smaller than Oklahoma. It's a little embarrassing, actually.
Yeah, it's completely embarrassing. And right now, what other than the protections you have for home grow, some people in New York can't even grow. So what then can you do if you can't even allow the already cannabis, medical marijuana, companies to even grow flower? People could grow flower at home, but they can't. What is happening that they aren't even moving on the medical side?
Listen, I think we were going to have to take a deeper dive in this because, we could talk about New York all day. Advocates need to actually write to the program. The program exists. You can get a medical card. Nothing has stopped in that. The goal has, of course, been they're in transition. They want to transition into adult use, but without having to have that appointment and confirmation from the Senate, it just can't happen. But what can happen is a better medical market. And that might actually be in the best interest of New York. We've seen and we've talked about other markets that have extended the time a bit before actually opening the market, and it performs better. One, people get more comfortable just legitimately carrying cannabis and it being, something that they can have on them without concern. That's something you cannot take lightly because we've been conditioned for multiple generations by the smell. But then the second thing is obviously there's a lot of public re-education that's needed. I mean, when COVID happened, there was some time I spent while I was in New York City and just trying to get people to track and trace was a whole huge project with multiple millions of dollars spent. Okay. That means cannabis has an ability to be re-educated with that type of focus and that type of ammunition behind it. So do it. Mm-hmm. That's this time right now.
Right. And he's still looking at impeachment. There's rumors and people stating they want him to step down. How quickly will we see the market move if the lieutenant governor was to take his place?
Okay, so she is someone that most people don't even know her name, real talk. And then we definitely don't know where she stands on cannabis, mostly because she's been really out of the political public eye. Last we know, she was kind of like he was. It's a gateway drug, and she's not strong on the program. And of course, it doesn't happen overnight for people unless you already partaken in the bud and you consider yourself a patient. You learn a lot faster when your own health is on the line. But yeah, when you're thinking that it's still a gateway drug and or all of the canophobic biases that come into mind, like that's not somebody I want making decisions on who gets to run anything anyway. So she should probably just stay where she at.
Oh, and that's that. And so we're going to end this hot topic because we could go on, but there is some real hot tea still hitting the streets. And hot topic number 2 is juicy, y'all, because they are saying NFL players are laundering money, allegedly.
Allegedly. Oh,
don't
my
come sue
goodness.
us. So these are accusations, you guys. Everything is allegedly. There are court documents being filed, but we don't know nothing but what the court documents say. So let's get into it. So there are some Atlanta Falcons that are in the cannabis industry. Yes, honey, former Atlanta Falcon, Julio Jones and Rodney White formed a holding company called SLW Holdings, and they got into the cannabis industry in Cali. And they did this forming a group called Genetics, and it was 5 members, including them for the holding company and 3 other people. And they went in and they got a license under the social equity program. True tea, y'all. Mm-hmm. And this all happened in February 2020. They got their nice little facility in Desert Hot Springs where they're going to cultivate and grow cannabis. And everything seemed great. They brought in a third party to help build out the facility, build out the operation pipeline. And that's when everything started going down the drain. But it really is a hot mess, you guys. So according to the lawsuit, the third party is being accused of spending excess money, nepotism within the construction company, and breaching the contract of his duties. Right? And so then Genetics was like, hold up. Y'all spending all this money. Show me the books. Where's the budgets? Where's your invoices? Show me the paperwork that you've been doing with all this construction. And according to the court documents, they could not find nothing of that. So they asked this person to be terminated in 2021 in March. Basically, that the court is saying that Jones and White and their holding companies went around them to continue to work with the third party to cultivate and grow cannabis. Now, allegedly growing it for the illegal market to enrich themselves. Because what did the third party do when they were terminated? They disconnected the cameras. They basically was like, no employees could come up in here. And they're saying that the third party, with the help of Julio Jones and Rodney White, was looting the place, removing all the equipment, removing all the materials from the harvest honey. And they was like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to take all the money as well. So now they're being sued for defrauding, conspiracy, breach of contract, breach of duty of good faith. So they just want some coin, honey.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm listening, and of course I read, and I was just like, all of these little moments, maybe again, this is the point where I realized I'm so serious about cannabis that I'm over some of the same like things that we were, these are the things that were happening when cannabis was a very, very young industry. Folks get into this industry and, not for nothing, I see wrong across the board on a couple different places. And I know there's more tea, and that's why I say I see wrong across the board. But like, you got to pick who you're going into business better. The fallout. There are so many business deals that go left for real in the non-cannabis world, but just all of this, because of the stigma, because of the history of cannabis, we got to do better, because the minute someone reads this and say this is the only thing they're reading, they're like, oh, that's what the cannabis industry is doing. This is some, we just run in the streets, kind of situation. We got this gang and this gang, and so we're going to do, whatever, even though there's, we're we're businessmen. We're supposed to be. The fact is, I get when you're trying to protect your investments. I get those. We've been in that situation, but you've got to decide how much energy you're going to put into something. And now it's a huge, amount of energy they'll have to use to overcome what's happening in the court of law. There's income and money that will be used towards that. And so the real question is it worth it? Is it worth it versus starting over? That's the other thing, is like people really are afraid of just amicably separating, because if you decided, okay, we don't like this contractor, and then the contractor third party decided with a couple of the partners they're going to go on the side, that's actually something you can make legitimate maneuvers on. Like you can make legitimate business deal maneuvers. You come to the table and you hammer it out. But instead, what they did was, like Mo Blessed Stuff said, they took the spot hostage. And you know what? That happens when that's a gang territory versus another gang territory. That does not necessarily happen when we are dealing in legitimate business transactions and mergers and acquisitions and the like, because that's all that is. And I think sometimes when people get into the cannabis space, there's a lot of people reinvent themselves. A lot of people absolutely reinvent themselves for sure. And then they get in above their head on the aspects of the business maneuvers. They also get a lot of people talking to them about what they should and shouldn't do. And I think that they thought this spot hostage thing probably sounded good. And they probably felt like they owned it themselves. You can't take your own stuff hostage, but it isn't the way you had to do it. There are elements that I think are missing in this, and that's how you wind up in court.
Okay, that's how you wound up in court, and it's all allegedly,
Yes.
And according to, because you already know, one of them already spoke out. Okay, so Rodney White told the Larry Brown Sports exclusively that the allegations are completely false. He said that he did a background check on them and learned that two of the people involved in genetics are felons and who put the company's cannabis license in jeopardy. He was also saying that he was trying to remove the two men from the company, and this is when the legal complaint happened. And he also said they financed this whole cannabis business from start to finish. Therefore, they have no reason to steal from themselves. Period.
Listen, he said exactly what I said. I feel him on that, and I probably believe him on that part of the finance. What I'm struggling with, and this is what I said, I think there's fault all around. What do they think we're doing when we're doing cannabis equity? The people who are owners, the people who are partners are felons until we get that shit expunged. Real talk. So you got to recognize that there's a little bit of hypocrisy here. I don't know the felons. I don't know what they have a felony for. But when we do that, I think it's important to recognize that if you're coming into the space, you have a social equity designated license. There is a part of that all included normally, right? I mean, we literally are writing the laws to say if you have a prior felony, arrest, conviction related to cannabis. So that doesn't prove that they're necessarily bad people, and it definitely doesn't prove that they've done anything ridiculous. In the same way, it doesn't prove that just because they took their spot back or they claimed what they know they put in as resources, that they were growing for the underground market. Both of these parties are using the canophobia to try to fight each other, and all they're doing is destroying the industry, right? Like that's the part where it's like y'all both could get out. Actually, we don't need y'all to be social equity licenses. Y'all don't know how to act. See the door. That's where I'm at right now. That's why I was like, I think I'm a little too serious sometimes when I look at these type of things. Now I'm irate a little bit because y'all playing with money. You're playing also with reputation, and there are other ways to do this. Just because it's cannabis doesn't mean all of a sudden you now created your own little fake cartel and you do cartel like moves. No.
Right. I definitely agree. It's hot tea though, because I did not know that the Falcons were in the cannabis industry at all. Former Falcons. I did not know that. I was like, what? They are hometown heroes. So it's just like, when did they get into cannabis? And who is these people on the genetics? They do have their whole board real on the hush hush, if you know what I mean. So who are these people? And hopefully they look like us.
That would make it worse for me, because now it's almost like, what are we fighting each other for? Figure it out business wise, okay? You don't have to operate this way, and actually, it can be win-win for people, right? I don't know. I'm a strategist, and my first thought is, how do we expand the pie? But yes, if I push up against the wall, and maybe that's how they felt allegedly, and they had to do what they had to do, especially when you put money in. There again, we've been there. You make your attempts, and if it is taking too much energy away from you really being able to move forward, then it really isn't. It's more of a detriment than it is a help to do it that way. So I ask these former NFL players, are they really trying to be in the industry, or do they want to spend the next 2 years of this crucial time period locked up in some legal battle around something that they could have handled a whole different way?
Okay. Well, we will see, and we will keep you guys posted, okay? And I would like to move on to hot topic number 3, because we really gonna get real shady with this one, y'all. So there were quite a few articles coming out this week talking about the top CEOs out of the United States and Canada, and being like, they're all white and they make millions of dollars. Well, we could have told you that. Therefore, we're going to tell you that again so y'all don't forget. And so basically, there was an article that came out saying that the top U.S. companies for cannabis and Canadian companies for cannabis are all white. They're saying that the top executives of these 14 of the largest companies, 70% of them are white and women, white men and women, and only 7% is identified as Black, and even less for any other ethnicity group. That's not funny. But it is said that the highest paid CEO is out of Cresco Labs with a $4 million in assets and income and bonuses. Then we have it followed by Jujushi Holdings, Columbia Care, Acreage, and guess who rounds out number 5? MedMen.
Yep, our friends at MedMen. Oh my goodness. Listen, I am struggling this week. This is my therapy, y'all. So let me take a sip, because I'm gonna be real shady. But it is what it is. I got to tell the truth. This is ridiculous. This is the hypocrisy of the industry, when you have people who are still getting locked up. I literally am going every year to ask for money from the cannabis tax revenue at the city of Portland. This year, giving away $1.8 million, and this man's salary base is higher than what I can give away into communities. We have an issue. I don't have a problem with acknowledging the amount of effort and stress of a CEO's position. Trust me, because I've called myself the cannabis CEO, and I have been a CEO, and for all intents and purposes, I'm still a CEO. And doing so from within the government structure actually also shows me how little the head people, or the chiefs and the deputy directors and the directors, get paid for the work that they're doing. But it's still just as important for us to be profitable, be productive, and optimize regularly. That doesn't happen enough in the government. But in corporate America, honey, this is what you are required to do. This is what they train us. I'm a thoroughbred in productivity and profitability. And to see these companies come in highly, like, oh my God, over inflated valuations, like the Aphria-Tilray merger was an $8 billion plus market cap where it ended after that merger. And then to see their salaries when you're getting cash losses in the hundreds of millions, definitely not profitable, not meeting your net revenue goals. Canopy didn't meet their net revenue goals by over $50 or $60 million, but their CEO still got a bonus. How does that make sense? What are we teaching our kids here? And also, when did that become the norm? I mean, there's some of this happening in the corporate space, non-cannabis too. We talk a lot about it. There's a lot of issue with how much the CEO makes, how much more times the lowest amount of salary in their infrastructure, we still should be looking at that. But it's ridiculous in cannabis because your company's not doing well. And guess what? Your flower sucks. The weed is dry. The products suck mostly. The legacy market's still better. What you getting a bonus for?
The bonus is because they really care about themselves. The bonus is not from good product or actually making good moves. I mean, some of these people could barely even file some of their public filings on time, right? Some of these companies aren't actually even filing their things, like Curaleaf. We have no idea what they make because they didn't file it, right? So, but we just heard about acquisition. We just heard they're open up a store, so there are a lot of different MSOs out here that are perpetuating big business, but it's hard to find. But when you look at their stock portfolio, you will learn some of the things that we're talking about that's happening. Also, they are multi-state, so sometimes they don't even know what one state is doing with the other state, because the states are so different.
They are. And there's different businesses. I mean, you look at these big companies, most multi-state operators are on average anywhere from 8 to 14 different entities if they are in those different states. And honestly, I just feel like it is also it's also like adding insult to injury, because it's still a tale of two worlds. We still have arrests happening. Cannabis is still a good chunk of all drug arrests in the country. And fewer than 2% of the cannabis executives are Black, while you can be 3.64 times more likely to be arrested as a Black person for cannabis possession, despite actually utilizing it less. I mean, I'm really frustrated because we have those same companies coming together and they want to legalize. They're doing a good job, I think, attempting to figure out how equity fits into this, but to, the conversations that I've been to is still they want to do it themselves. And I'm like, but you're not an expert on that. You don't know because you would have done it already. You don't know because you're not experiencing that. You don't know because you don't have enough diversity to be able to contribute to that. Like, there's a lot of confusion even what equity is, but definitely we know what diversity is and we know what inclusion looks like. We don't know what equity looks like in our country yet. And I think we're going to continue to mess it up because we go back to the same old tactics, which is big companies trying to spend their dollars not to actually fund the smaller entities doing that type of work, but they want to create their own stuff. So they're building their own thing and they're like, well, we don't really know what to put in it. But you think you could stop doing what you're doing so you could come do our stuff? No, we're not at that point no more. But I do feel like this is the issue I'm having with the cannabis space, is that we are a tale of two cities. And I personally, or two worlds rather, I personally find it disgusting that we're not talking about it enough. And I'm glad we're bringing it up here because it is the case that this is the prime example when people say it's the whitening of the cannabis space. It is, because the legacy market that has been historically criminalized is very diverse.
Well, yes, it is very diverse. And to your point, though, according to the Insider article, they did reach out to 14 of the largest. Only 11 volunteered information. Tilray and MedMen declined to comment, of course. However, all of them are trying to build within themselves a diversity and inclusion I want to say department. They want to hire a diversity and inclusion executive that will help bring people into the market. But how about this? How about some of these white people in these positions? I mean, Black people, Latin people, disabled people, veterans. They probably 99.9% qualify for those, especially since some of these positions is even made up too, because we know that. So some of these positions is made up to be customized to cannabis. Why don't we hire them? I mean, you don't actually have to build a department to have diversity and inclusion into your company.
That's the problem. We are It's the performance. So you say you're going to make a department, and then you do. And I'm not scoffing at it. Like, I had really great relationship with the diversity and inclusion team at Target. It's since been renamed because I think they recognize that was being like othered, right? It's almost like we're othering the work. It does need to be integrated. It should be just part of how you build your team. It shouldn't, like, it's nothing worse than going as an MBA student. I remember going on recruitment, and you go to the big fairs, and everybody that's doing the diversity recruitment is the only people of color at the table. That's problematic. That's the issue right there. That's a show that, and that's when I'm like, oh, great performance. But what exactly is happening? Especially since it's not like I'm being recruited to the diversity and recruitment team. I'm being recruited to the business leadership team that still is mostly white. So it's like, that doesn't make me feel like it is actually being implemented. It just looks like it's showing. But I'm glad, again, that they did respond. I'm glad that there is some level of accountability, but I still think at the end of the day, the fact that they are sliding their paper over with their millions of dollars on it and have no guilt associated with it, they're probably comparing themselves to the CEOs in the non-cannabis space and basically being like, yeah, I need that $1,000 a month car allowance. This is the last thing I'll say, because when I read that, I was like, what? So the Afria-Tilray merger has led to them hiring full-time. He was an independent contractor, their CEO. This CEO package was an $8 million plus package, with $1 million being the base. Yes, a base of $1 million a year, up to 350% bonus based on, again, subjective goals or performance indicators. It's clear to me from the other ones that you could have a unprofitable year and still get a bonus. That would have never happened at Target, by the way.
They would have been like, fired.
Right. But 350% on the base, that is 3.5 times that 1 million. That means on a bonus alone, the CEO could get a $3.5 million bonus for that year. And $1,000 a month car allowance. And I thought to myself, now I've owned some luxury vehicles, y'all, and I've had a note, but $1,000 a month. I'm like, what car is he driving? Cars, plural. Is it necessary? I mean, I don't know. There's a part of me that's starting to feel, especially after the pandemic, when we are all stuck inside and you can't use these really expensive, ridiculous purchases, like, are we really doing the right things with our money? I have no qualms with people wanting luxury, get that. But the reality is that it just doesn't make sense that a company should have to pay for that, especially when it hasn't proven itself, especially when there's still so many people in jail as a result of it. It's like his car allowance could be helping expunge people, right?
Right. Well, it is definitely especially difficult when companies like this aren't willing to reinvest in the community, but sell into the community. Y'all want us to buy y'all product so y'all can pay your CEO $1 million? Like, that's what y'all want us to do? Yes. People are buying stocks, and some of these stocks are inflated and empty, honey. But he get $1 million in cash.
That's the key thing. Now, the rest of it, there were $7 million in restricted stock units, and they vest in 3 years. Who knows where the company will be in 3 years? But Tilray's been around, Africa's been around, so presumably he can then, cash in on those if he wants. But the fact of the matter is that $1 million cash is still nothing to be scoffed at. Like I said, that's what I fought for this year to give to the social equity and educational development initiatives at the City of Portland. So I think it is about us recognizing that we absolutely are we should be judging product when it comes to the cannabis space more than any other place. And I think you can be a conscious shopper and, decide when you're going to use the Amazon, when you're going to use the small business owner. But in cannabis, our ability to impact the way this industry grows, our conscious consumerism is going to be the key to it. Don't take no dry flower or bad weed, right? Like, don't buy bad weed, period. And call it what it is. Don't go into these dispensaries pretending you've never. I'm talking to the legacy consumers who know you might not be like you're not hustling in the market. You've been buying in the market. You've been shopping that legacy market for 20 plus years. You know what good weed looks like. Do not accept it just because you got a Apple-like store dispensary experience. It's not worth it. Check your flower, check your products, check the expiration dates. Call out the things that don't feel in parity with your other experiences, because one, it's very expensive. It is not a cheap endeavor. You'll be wasting your dollars. And two, it actually does impact your health. So yeah, I think we have to also call out when we don't like the politics of the structures within, whether they are supporting equity is a key thing, and what is the multiple of their CEO times the lowest paid employee that works there. And if that is a ridiculous number, then no ma'am, no sir, I can't shop there.
I mean, they not paying that employees that much, because we know they be begging in the dispensary for that little tip. And with that being said, we can move on to main topic, honey, because we still got a really good juicy main topic. Really, Delta-8 debate, y'all. We just got it. We had to do it. We had to do it because there was just way too much confusion for Delta-8. And I'm sorry, but I do not want another person to ask me about Delta-8. Okay? I'm going to refer you to She Blaze.
You're right. Actually, we did talk about a little bit. So I did refer a couple people to just that. I've been consulted on quite a few articles about it, having a molecular biology background. And quite frankly, sometimes I be Twitter beefing about some people's response to it because, folks are really upset about regulation, over-regulation. And this is just one of those gray areas that, I think that they feel should not be touched. And I have a different opinion. I'm not for over-regulation anytime. Don't get me wrong. But we should know what we're putting in our body. And I have a strong side eye on most of the Delta-8 products that I'm seeing hit the market.
Yes, I do too. Okay. I'm like, just get you a little CBD isolate then, baby, if that's really what you want. And so we're going to get into it and have you use some of that science brain to really, really help us break down Delta-8 and Delta-9 too, because people are cross-confusing them because they're both kind of like THC like. I have a lot of people that's like, well, they said Delta-8 is going to get me high. And I'm like, it does if it's in there. So we start there first. If it's in there, it will, but I don't know if it's the same type of high you're looking for, So we definitely want to break that down and then talk about it, because right now I feel like as far as the market, a lot of the Delta-8 is synthetic. It's not like actually naturally occurring Delta-8. So help us break down what is Delta-8 and why is it different from Delta-9?
Well, first of all, I just want to be very crystal clear. These are both THC, point blank and period. There's not kind of, sort of, it is. THC, like other molecules that are hydrocarbon rings and have double bonds, they can create what we call isomers, and that means the bond changes of position. And that's really the biggest difference between Delta-8 and Delta-9. If you are not into chemistry, molecular biology, that type of science, you're not really going to maybe at first glance notice the difference on paper when you draw it. This is the time where I wish I had like a little slideshow so I can show you the difference. It's very subtle. It is actually so subtle that it could be used in one of those type of tests where they show you two things that look so similar and they ask you to point out what's different. And most people will not most people, enough people will not be able to do it. So I don't want anyone to be confused here. They are very, very similar forms of THC. And basically the difference is because that double bond, now the molecule integrity has shifted. It has changed. Whether or not we could visibly see it, it still has changed. And guess what fuels it? Our endocannabinoid system. And the way it now binds to the receptor is definitely different from Delta-9 THC. However, it actually still, again, mimics a lot of the same thing, because even though that one bond is changed, everything else is pretty much the same. So again, Delta-9 THC is the THC that we all know and love, and some government hates because they include it as a Schedule 1. And so whenever we're talking about what's illegal, that is the very specific molecule that they isolated as the issue. That's the molecule that if you are growing hemp, you can't have more than 0.3% of this in your hemp. In your final product, in your flower product, that anything above that is called hot hemp. Okay, and so there's just a little bit of, again, nuance. Once Delta-9 starts degrading, which is usually due to time and or light exposure, Delta-9 can degrade into CBN, which actually makes you really sleepy, or it can degrade into Delta-8. And there's no rhyme or reason necessarily, like I can see scientifically, as to the choice. Is just a pathway of degradation. And, I don't right now know that we know enough science to be able to force it one way or another. But over time, that's what happens. So as your weed gets old, you're getting more Delta-8 because Delta-9 is starting to turn into that, but you're also getting more CBN. So that's what gives us back to, well, how are they making this? If you are starting with less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, that is not a lot of THC, right?
You're not making Delta-8.
Right. And even if you were to wait, or you can do a hyper light, there are things you can force the degradation of Delta-9 into either Delta-8 or CBN. Even if you did that, it still would be a very small amount, because again, now we're taking a 0.3%, we're splitting it across what it can degrade to, and that is even less. And so imagine then deciding you want to take that and pull it out, extract it. You would have to grow so much flower. Like, it's not even funny, like the biomass you'd have to grow to make products that we are seeing on the market. We got products that are talking about they 100 milligrams of Delta-8 or 300 milligrams of Delta-8. That's a lot of biomass. So the science points us right to the fact that you said most of this in the market has to be synthetic, because nobody's going to spend that much money growing that much flower, doing that process, which, by the way, is still a little bit more laborious than the other process I'm about to describe, and only get that little amount of yield. That's just not a smart business decision. No. So the other way you can make Delta-8, because again, all of the cannabinoids are pretty promiscuous. They do look a lot alike, again, and we talk a lot about how they can morph and switch into each other, sometimes naturally, and a lot of times through synthetics. Synthetic in the lab, meaning, you're applying heat, you're doing it purposely. So you can take isolated CBD and do that in the lab and make it into Delta-8. That is the only way I can see some of these really large dosages and potency levels for the Delta-8 products that are on the market.
Absolutely. And to be honest, I have quite a few friends that have used some Delta-8 products and said they felt nothing. It feels like CBD. I'm like, probably is. But, I definitely feel like the science behind it is not with the marketing. It's not in the smoke shops, where I'm from, that's where it's located. In the South, if you're looking anywhere in the South, Delta-8 is what's taking over the smoke shops. Delta-8 flour, Delta-8 food, Delta-8 vape, just all of it. And so recently, we've had so much experiences now dealing with Delta-8, because I feel like people have been asking a lot about it for the last year or so. Delta-8 has been on everybody's mind. So recently, we've been seeing an impact within the industry about how Delta-8 is really affecting us, affecting businesses, affecting farmers, but also how regulators are doing it as well. And right now, we basically had Champ's trade show a couple weeks ago, and the tea was hot on the streets with Champ's, where they were basically talking about they shut down Champs, DA, AFTA, all of them was up in there arresting people, making people take down their exhibits. Like they couldn't actually do anything with their exhibit if they were selling Delta-8. And it was this whole big thing. I mean, we ended up finding out that they didn't do all that. They did ask a few people to leave, but they were stated that, earlier in the week, it stated that Delta-8 would be not allowed and that you wouldn't be able to give samples or nothing. And Champ's Trade Show was in Nevada. So now we're seeing an impact in the industry in a real way with what's happening with Delta-8. I've seen also a lot of hemp farmers be very, very angry about Delta-8 because they aren't able to compete with the Delta-8 flower versus their hemp flower, which is already hard to grow because they're trying to make it a certain random number of THC.
Well, let's take a step back. Delta-8 flower, what is that exactly? If we just describe the two pathways that you can make Delta-8, let's again go back to the science because I think that's most important. The very first thing you should know is once something is in isolate, is usually in a crystallized form. It's no longer in the flower form. So making CBD into an isolate and then changing that into Delta-8, the only products you can make are ones that are going to be infused and or concentrated products, because that's what the actual substance is. It is no longer in the flower state. You can't rub that on flower and now you have Delta-8 flower. So then if I ask, and I've been asking a lot of people who say they're selling it, Delta-8 flower is made how then? Well, by the way that we just said, the degradation of Delta-9, because let's be honest. Again, when you're growing hemp, every form of cannabis is going to have some amount of Delta-9 THC. It is still a relatively dominant cannabinoid. Now, genetics can help with what that looks like on the chemical profile, and hemp genetics has now improved in such a way that people are more and more getting as close to that 0.3%. But if you go over 0.3%, guess what you got now? You got hot hemp. And in some states, hot hemp is really bad. You got to burn it and et cetera, get rid of it right away. In other states, you just have to get rid of it. And I think that there are people growing hot hemp, which means you might have 1 to 5% of THC Delta-9, and you can take that and force degradation, and now you can get what I call old weed, really, but you can get a reasonable amount of Delta-8 in a plant form. You're still going to probably have a lot of CBN too. I have yet to have a cultivator explain to me how they're actually getting Delta-8 flower, because I do feel like it doesn't make sense right now with the science. There's nothing that I know of in the genetics that I know of. And again, please correct us if we're wrong. We love hearing new information and new tea. We'll bring it and we'll correct it. But that I know of, there's no genetics that are saying, right now you got seeds that will grow you some Delta-8 flower. That's not real. Maybe it will be. But so whenever I see
Delta-8 getting from China.
Yeah, whenever I see Delta-8 flower, here's what I'll say. Whenever I see Delta-8 flower, I already know something has gone afoul if the person is saying that they are legitimately a fully compliant business. That's a fact. Now, somebody will say, well, why Dasheeda? Because there's CBD flower. Well, CBD flower is literally hemp flower. It is the most abundant a cannabinoid grown naturally at CBD and found in hemp. And so all we're doing is, basically, cultivating and harvesting that flower in its, genetic chemical makeup. I just don't know that I've seen any genetics that show high Delta-8.
Right. Well, that's why other hemp farmers are really going against it. They are feeling like, at the end of the day, this puts them in an unnecessary competition because at hemp, it does over time turn into Delta-8. You don't have to force feed it to be Delta-8. And why don't you just sell regular hemp, So people are feeling really nervous. I mean, after the Trump's trade show, I know people are definitely up in arms about how and where and when they can sell Delta-8. I mean, honestly, how it's affecting the industry is I feel like Delta-8 is putting it's putting a bad look on us in cannabis, because when I have to explain to my non-cannabis friends and they're very curious about it, and they're like, oh, Delta-8 doesn't, no drug test. It gets you a little high, but not a lot of high. And then they get the product, and honestly, it does nothing for them. They're feeling a little jip. They're like, I don't want to use that. That's nothing. Like, I don't even understand why it's getting banned. So I really feel like we do have to understand the science a little bit more, and it's affecting us in the industry, because we are telling people, oh yes, try this cannabis, try CBD, try this, but now it's being taken over by Delta-8, and they're really pushing for it. When you go in the smoke shops, that's the first thing they push for. They're really pushing for it, and we don't even know what they're pushing for.
You hit the nail on the head that we are telling people to try. I would say I'm not bougie fully about smoke shops, but I'm always a little bit hesitant about buying any hemp flower, even out of the smoke shops. At the end of the day, I still think that flower needs to come from a cultivator that you know of. 99% of the experiences that I have in a smoke shop, they don't know who cultivated it or what the information is. It's just what's on the bottle or the jar. I think the Delta-8 space is being banned also because of the impact on what's happening with the legal Delta-9 space. And I know we'll talk about that next, but I do want to point out that everybody has a different response. My friends that use Delta-8 stuff, or acquaintances, they actually do have a response. It is a very light high for them, but there's also some people who have that kind of response with CBD. If you've never taken it before, and you always I say this as a New Yorker, your chest is always like a little tight, shoulders up, because that's how we are. We walk around. You actually do have a very significant feeling and a relaxation that can feel a little high too when you take CBD in your first few times. Now, if it becomes part of your regimen and is regular, that is not necessarily the case. So I don't want to, again, give this belief that Delta-8 doesn't necessarily, it works the same way all the other cannabinoids work. Everybody is different. What works for you, Ice, may not work for me. We talk a lot about our differences in even our CBD usage, right? We talk a lot about our differences in some of those things, but then at the same time, when we think about high THC flower terpene mixes, we like a lot of the same terpene mixes, right? So I think, again,
some of these products don't actually have Delta-8 in it, is what I'm saying.
That's true too, but that's
actually what I said. That's what I was saying.
I'm going to get to that in a second. The reason that those products don't have Delta-8 in it, and we don't know whether they do or don't, is the same reason why some of the CBD products don't work on people too, because it is not being regulated in a way that forces the integrity within the space. You have a lot of snake oil salespeople out there. You have a lot of people doing the same thing with the CBD. This is the CBD market 2 years ago. 2 years ago, after the Farm Act passed, literally everybody went crazy at the top of 2019, dropped all these different CBD products. Every gas station, every smoke shop now got CBD flower, CBD products, don't know how to talk about them, don't even know that is cannabidiol, like they don't know what it actually stands for, and it was comedy. So it's the same thing. I think the challenge is we cannot look at cannabis as a green rush. We have to look at it as what it is. It is a thousands of year long medicinal plant that legitimately naturally is a pharmacy. And so you're not going to get to the money fast by cutting corners, staying gray. And right now, Delta-8 is being made in a gray market.
Yes, it is. Or even a ban market. because of we finding out at Champs. If you even look up like what states have banned Delta-8, every month is a new state, to the point where some of these lists can't even stay up to date, because most of the stuff, if you Google and you look at the different articles, you look at the different states, most of them don't say Nevada, and Nevada definitely banned Delta-8 this past, when the governor did a sweeping of all those bills we named. It was about cannabis consumption and stuff like that. It was also a bill in there that banned Delta-8. And so we first time seeing it at Champs in action, seeing them shut you down and be like, no Delta-8 here. And it's in a lot of the legal states too are banning it, like Colorado, Arizona, Washington. You're a legal state. Why are you banning it?
So, we're banning it because, of course, they don't understand that if people don't want to pay a lot of money for Delta-9 THC, obviously they're going to go for something that seems to be lighter, cheaper. Delta-8 is considerably cheaper as compared to most of the legal markets and what their quote unquote Delta-9 THC is. And I don't know. I think at the end of the day, if you really, really press about trying Delta-8, your best bet, and you're in a legal state, buy your flower from a legal dispensary. Still do the same inspection, because some states, again, as much as I talk junk about what's happening in the hemp market, the high THC market has its own woes and issues as well. But you might as well just put that joint
Delta-8 in the legal market too in California,
because it's been sitting on the shelf forever. Exactly. So that was my whole point, that now you can just buy your flower from the legal market, put that joint in the windowsill and wait, and then at some point you'll be able to try some Delta-8.
Okay, because they flower old as hell. Okay.
There's definitely that, yes.
It's like 2 quarters in between before it's like, dang, you harvested this last year? Like, that thing really looked like Delta-8. Okay, that's probably what it is on the low in Cali, okay? Because we have seen some very extensive harvest dates compared to purchase dates.
Oh, 1000%. And we talking about just in a jar, not in a like perfectly kept, because you can keep your cannabis long if you keep the environment right, but it's in a jar on a shelf. It got a shelf life too.
Okay, and it smoked like it. We was smoking Delta-8 in California, y'all. Y'all better stop with the Cali pack, that Delta-8. But
that is hilarious. I think I'm gonna tweet that. Y'all know that Cali pack is just Delta-8 flower.
For sure. Here we are. Here I go. Always ban. I mean, maybe that's also why California didn't ban Delta-8, because California is surprisingly one of the states that's not on the ban list.
You know what? Here's what I would suggest. I actually suggest potentially banning Delta-8 products that are manufactured products, because 1000% they're coming from CBD isolate. But I do think that the legal cannabis market has a market clearly for Delta-8 flower, because it's being sold in the hemp-based market. And so my suggestion is, as your batch or your harvest is getting old, make a shift, do some relabeling. That expense goes back to you. Reduce the price. It's like the version of clearance for cannabis.
Oh.
Delta-8 is the clearance rack.
I know that's right. Okay, Kay. Yes. We're going to have to put that in the new update.
I still don't want to smoke no old weed. I'm sorry. I'm good. It's like asking, do you want old lettuce? What's the clearance rack for lettuce? You buying lettuce that's brown? I guess some folks do. I don't know.
When you get it from the dollars, when you get it from the 99-cent store, you got like 3 days in the refrigerator.
That's still good though. It's still not past this point, but you're right. The closer it gets to these, like you buy lettuce at the bodega and it's not like New York fresh, like out in the front lettuce, farmer's market style. You do wrapped up in a plastic, you do got like 2 or 3 days.
Yes.
Your salad bag's not gonna last very long.
No. And if you live in a food desert, like somewhere in most of the South, where they're not getting very fresh veggies at the grocery store either. They got to go to the farmers market for the real joints, which is maybe where people need to go in legal states to find the better cannabis. Because a lot of these cannabis be old and stale, honey.
Yes.
But we have to continue this debate because Delta-8 and Delta-10, which we didn't even talk about, they are taking over like a whirlwind. So it is quite intense, and we will continue the conversation. We will continue the knowledge building and the understanding, and keep y'all up to date on the bans. Okay.
Yes, and unfortunately for y'all, though, this is one area that I will not be doing no trial. I know a few people are definitely interested in trying Delta-8 products. More power to you. So maybe we're gonna have to survey our friends a little bit more just to continue to test that. But that's just one of those things that I'm not interested. Somebody asked me, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm good on the Delta-8 vapes. I'm good on the Delta-8 gummies. I'm good.
Okay, I know that's right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for a wonderful episode. We are about to get out of here because, as you see, the cannabis streets are heating up, but so are our lives. And so we got to get on out of here. But thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week. Make sure you binge us on anywhere: YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and follow us at she_blaze on IG.
What's up? Where they gonna find you at?
Oh, yes. And you follow me, Ice Dawson, at Cannabis Socialite on Instagram too.
Yes, and this is officially your birthday month, so you'll see us shouting out Ice a little bit. But also, we are celebrating 5 years in the industry, and so is going to be giveaways. There's going to be reminiscing and reminding ourselves what this journey has been on, and you should just check us out. If you can follow my journey and our journey at Dasheeda Dawson on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, the WeedHead.com is where you find us all. I'm excited. We got 5 years in the game, moving on to the next thing. But you know what? What this means is we old in the space. It's like dog years. Sorry. Dog years in cannabis, and college years also, because sometimes by the time you get to a senior in college or even high school, and then you see these freshmen come in, you're like, you want to help them. And we're here to help.
I don't want to help nobody.
We're here to help.
I'm like, we got a book.
That is true. We do have a book. It is a bestseller, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. We'll absolutely help you. And I'm really excited because the 4th edition is on its way. It's going to include things like Delta-8 and some of the new states and the new issues and the new things we should be focused on, with a whole chapter on cannabis equity. What?
I know that's right. Exciting. Well,
Yay.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right. Bye.